Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for the first episode of our brand new series, The Eyes of the Opposition. In this series, I'll be getting an in-depth chat and look with a writer or journalist from the opposition team. Could get tense at some points during the season, especially when we have to play that lot down the road, or from up in the northwest as well. But we're here to talk about Newcastle today. But if you're enjoying the channel, of course, we hit 15,000 subscribers just over today, so thank you so much for the continued support and the comments. Please keep leaving those comments in the description because they're fantastic. Please subscribe if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. But let's jump right into the video. I'm joined today by Andrew Musgrove of the Chronicle in Newcastle, and he's here to answer plenty of questions that you and I both have ahead of the game against the Magpies. Let's jump straight in with the first question, which is quite simply that Arsenal had a very good pre-season this year, but I'm interested in how well Newcastle's pre-season preparations have been.
Newcastle United's pre-season was quite mixed. They were thumped against Wolverhampton Wanderers over in China. They didn't have a manager. Ben Dawson, Neil Redfern, that's Newcastle's youth staff, had to take over. One plus there, I guess, was that they kept on top of their fitness for the players. The players were still put through their training regime, and they're ready and they're fit for the kick-off, which is important because when you lose a manager in the close season, that's always the worry. The gap in between a point and new one. Do the players keep on top of their fitness? And to be fair to Newcastle United, the players have done, which is brilliant. It's not about results. Against Wolves, they were terrible. Against West Ham, was a much improved performance under Steve Bruce. And then since then, the performances have got better, which is good. But like I say, it's not really about results. 2 wins against St Etienne and Hibernian, beat off Preston North End. And we've seen glimpses of these new players. We've seen glimpses of how Steve Bruce looks like he's going to play, very attacking compared to Rafa Benitez. It's exciting. I think that the fans, although not all the middle minute, are looking forward to it in a strange kind of way because it does look like they're going to play with more freedom. We've seen that with the games they've played so far in pre-season. St Etienne, a prime example, and it's the pre-season's given a new lease of life, I think, to certain players. Hayden more attacking, Longstaff more attacking, McGrath Muir in a central role. So it's exciting to see these players in new positions and having a bit more freedom to play with. But it's not really been, like I say, about the results. It's been about the fitness, and I think Newcastle are fully prepared for the new season.
So a mixed pre-season for Newcastle there, which you can take one of two ways. Obviously, pre-season games there, as Andrew says, don't mean too much in terms of the result. It's all about getting match fitness and sort of getting those connection with new players and obviously youth players as well and new people into the side. Arsenal had a fairly successful one, but Newcastle's has been up and down. Steve Bruce coming in after Rafa Benitez's exit was going to be turbulent, and that's clearly been shown in pre-season. Quite simply, the next question links into those new players that have been featuring the Arsenal and Newcastle. There's a synonymous link between the two, that spending is certainly lacking. So I'm interested to see now that even though both clubs have spent the money, how do you think the money has actually been spent?
I describe Newcastle United's summer window as interesting. The money had to be spent. The money was there to be spent. Ayoze Perez left to go to Leicester for £30 million. So his fee had to be put back into the club. There was no question about that. They lost Salomon Rondon as well. Those two were key reasons to why Newcastle United stayed up. So good to see it being respent. They've replaced Rondon with Joe Linton. £40 million, a record buy from the Bundesliga, from Hoffenheim. It's a gamble, not a prolific goal scorer, but good with assists. He does know where the goal is, and he has scored in his last 2 games in the pre-season friendlies. He's looked sharp, and he does look a good talent. Obviously, Andy Carroll's come on a free, which is a bit of a Hollywood story, isn't it? But if he's fit, brilliant. It could be the bargain of the summer. We just hope that he can get fit, and it would be a great story, wouldn't it, to see him back on the pitch at some point. And then when he won't be playing on Sunday because he's not fit, but still, and they've got Alan Saint-Maximin again from France. He's another exciting player, someone that really gets the fans off the seat. We've only saw maybe 20 minutes, I think he had, against St Etienne, but as soon as he came on, dropped the shoulder, and the fans were out of their seats. And he had a lovely little flick to Jethro Williams, who's another signing who's coming on loan. They passed it over to Matty Longstaff, and he scored the winner last Saturday. But he looks exciting, does Alan Saint-Maximin. He's one of those players like Hatham Ben Arfa, like David Ginola for the older generation. Just gets Newcastle United fans out of their seats, and that's what we want. Elsewhere, Jethro Williams, a good little addition on the left. It fits in nicely to how Newcastle want to set up. Emil Kraft as well, someone they've looked at, someone they've scouted at, and it's about the long game. 5 million is a reported fee, and he'll add something to the right hand side, which is good. So they needed to strengthen on both flanks, and they've done that. I would like to have seen another striker come in. It's a bit of a worry if Joe Linton doesn't have the form or gets injured or suspended. But all in all, if we're going to give it a grade, I'd give it a C-, room for improvement. But at least they kept Sean Longstaff and Isaac Hayden and Jamal Lascelles, which was a massive bonus.
I'm actually really surprised with the C- grade, Andrew, that you gave them, because from seeing Jonathan and St Maximin, two really exciting players, and for a season in which Newcastle struggled to spend a lot of money, they've really laid out some money on the table this summer. Of course, I don't feel the same pain that you do season upon season with Mike Ashley in charge, and I have complete empathetic feelings for that. But with both clubs spending much more than they usually do in the summer windows, it's going to be really intriguing to see where this goes moving forwards, and obviously into the game on Sunday. Now, the next question is talking about the managerial change. Obviously, losing Rafa, moving on from that into Steve Bruce. I'm really curious as to how the fans took it and what your opinion is of the change.
Rafa Benitez was loved by fans. He was well liked by journalists. It was always interesting going to the press conferences. But he's gone now, and I think there's a little bit of an acceptance that this is what we've got now. We have Steve Bruce here at St James's Park. Benitez is no longer manager. I think that's different from saying they're happy with Steve Bruce. I think there is starting to be an acceptance that Bruce is in charge. If you're going to back the team, you've got to back the manager. And Bruce is well aware that points is all that can change the opinion now. And I think it has died down in the last few days of the signings and the good start of the pre-season. But they're not happy at Mike Ashley. I think for most people, it's not a case of being angry at Steve Bruce. He wouldn't take this job. I think it's more being angry that Rafa Benitez was allowed to walk away. So that's where the anger has directed that. And I just think, it could have been anyone. It could have been Jose Mourinho. Arsene Wenger was linked at one point when a takeover was mooted. So two of the biggest names in football management. But would have it made a difference? I honestly don't think it would have done, because of what Benitez did here, the way he conducted himself, not just at the football club, but in the community and with the people of Newcastle. Whoever came in was always going to have the toughest job. Benitez has referenced that. Bruce has referenced that. He said, "I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I know I'm not Rafa Benitez." So he knows how people think. He knows what how people feel and what they're thinking on the terraces. So he's well aware of the feeling. Like I say, I think it's just points that can change.
Your answer there, Andrew, brilliantly segues into the next question. There's been change, frustrations that Mike Ashley is still there. So I'm really curious as to what actually the long-term goals for Newcastle are moving forward. Spending has happened more than we've seen in the past, but do you expect to see too much change going forwards?
The long-term goals at Newcastle United, well, I think only Mike Ashley knows that. Can they break into the top 10? I don't think so. I think they've spent well within the restrictions that Mike Ashley would like. Is it good enough for the top 10? I don't think so. I think you look around at what other teams are doing. I think, at least on paper, there's some better teams out there. I think there are 10 better teams. But I don't think they'll get relegated. I don't think they'll be in a relegation battle for as long as they have been the last couple of seasons. I think it'll be a comfortable mid-table finish. I think top 10 will just be out of their reach unless results go their way. Long-term aims, who knows? I think only Mike Ashley knows the answer to that. Does he want to sell? Yes. Has there been a buy that's met his asking price? No. I think he realises that while he's still owner of Newcastle United, he has to put money in to make sure they're still in the Premier League, because you get relegated to the Championship, it's going to cost them more in the long run, and it's going to knock value off the club. So I think he realises that, but I also think there was money there to spend all along. It's not been a change of heart. It's been probably what he was going to give Benitez. It was the players which were the question mark. But as for long term, like I say, I think only Mike Ashley knows the answer to that.
You can really see the pain of obviously having an owner like that. Arsenal fans know with the issues that we've got ongoing with Stan Kroenke and Josh Kroenke, but at least there's sort of that communication that's begun to happen at Arsenal with Josh Kroenke coming out in the summer and addressing a lot of the fans' concerns. But to see what Mike Ashley is doing, even as someone who's not obviously a Newcastle fan, as I said at the beginning, those empathetic feelings are there for a fellow football club that are just struggling under some awful custodianship by Mike Ashley, and it's an issue. And so that's why the long-term goals are quite foggy at the moment, and I can understand why. Sort of moving in and focusing on the game on Sunday then, a key question, and this is by no means to sort of put a Newcastle at any disadvantage, but I'm keen to know the areas that, whilst they've strengthened in a forward way with Jonathan and St Maximin, as we've talked about, are there still key areas of weakness that Arsenal are going to try to exploit on Sunday's opening fixture?
What are the key weaknesses that I expect Arsenal to exploit on Sunday? I don't want to give anything away. I think Emery mentioned it in his press conference that Newcastle United have changed a lot. He's watched, by the sounds of it, a few games in pre-season and seen how different they are to Rafa Benitez, and that's the important point there. They are a very different side to how Rafa Benitez had them set up. I think we all know Rafa Benitez would have gone into this game very defensive, looking to hit Arsenal on the counter-attack. A point is probably what the aim would have been. Whereas I'm not too sure that is Steve Bruce's idea. I think, especially given it's his first home game, he's going to want to go in and throw caution to the wind a little bit. We've seen in pre-season that they have set up quite attacking. 3 centre-backs, 2 wing-backs, 3 across the middle with 2 up top now. There were times against St Etienne when the French side countered and there was a big space in that middle of the park because Longstaff and Hayden were so far advanced. And I do worry that if Arsenal get the ball and Newcastle go forward and they lose it and Arsenal get it, they hit Newcastle on the counter, then we all know Arsenal's got electrifying pace. They've got brilliant talent. If Pepe and Lacazette miss out, it's not too big of a worry because of the players they've got. By all the sounds of it, they're going to play. So I think Newcastle United fans are going to be looking forward to seeing how Newcastle handle the likes of Pepe, Lacazette, of course, Aubameyang. But I don't really think anyone knows the weaknesses of Steve Bruce's side until we've seen them play. Sunday's the first time we've seen them play in a competitive game. I do expect that if he sets up how he has against St Etienne and Hibernian and Preston, that they may be hit on the counter. So just watch out, I think, for that one.
Now, we all know that Arsenal's main strength is definitely hitting teams on the counter, and as Andrew says that could be an area of weakness for the Magpies. But also we saw last season that a lot of teams worked out Arsenal and their strength of hitting teams on the counter, and it meant that they sat back and they absorbed pressure and they just defended really well as a unit and then hit Arsenal on the counter, and it worked plenty of times with defensive mistakes, definitely haunting Arsenal moving through last season. But if there is chances and gaps in that midfield, Arsenal will utilise those. Of course, we now know that Ozil and Kolasinac won't be involved, which means you lose one of your biggest creators. And a lot of your width from a left-back role, which will now be most likely occupied by Nacho Monreal, of which doesn't provide as much going forward or as much pace. But there is still the opportunity there. Ceballos, I imagine, will take the place of Ozil with Xhaka and possibly Guendouzi or Torreira if Unai Emery feels he's going to be fit enough into that middle of the park. Will they utilise that pace and that strength in the forward line? I definitely think they will, and that's definitely something that we can go forward and definitely exploit in the Magpies side. Finally then, very simple. I just need, Andrew, your prediction for Sunday's game.
Score prediction, well, look, part of me thinks Arsenal should win this and win it quite easily. Another part of me thinks it's Steve Bruce's first game at home. The players seem happy with the new manager. Seem happy with the new signs. The new signs have seemed to have fitted in. So, I think the atmosphere within the dressing room is going to be really good. I think the interesting point will come with this proposed boycott. How many people will turn up? How many people will boycott the game? What will the atmosphere be like inside? I think that'll play a big part. If it's a good atmosphere, I think it will play in Newcastle's hands. I think that will help. But I think, again, no one knows until 2 o'clock on Sunday. The other part of me thinks Newcastle might spring a surprise because, like I say, good atmosphere inside. Steve Bruce has to start well. Of course he wants to, but he has to. But the players generally do seem happy, and I'm not sure what kind of effect that will have. I'm hoping it'll have a good one because I want Newcastle to win and start the season really well. Score prediction, I'll go 1-1 Newcastle-Arsenal. I think it will be quite an open game. And it'll just be interesting to see how Steve Bruce sets up against a very, very attacking Arsenal.
A huge thank you to Andrew taking the time out of his evening to help us out with the preview. It's 1-1. It's a very conservative scoreline, especially obviously as a fan of Newcastle. You wouldn't want to predict them losing. But if it's an open game, like you say, I think that will play in Arsenal's hands quite well. I'm really intrigued to see how Arsenal approach it. And moving forwards, if we can exploit those areas of weakness that you highlighted, I think that Arsenal might just nick the win, which therefore I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for the Arsenal, just getting that little extra edge over the 1-1 prediction that Andrew's got for us. If you'd like to follow Andrew, it's AD Musgrove on Twitter. He writes for the Chronicle up in Newcastle, some fantastic writings going on there. And a huge thank you again for Andrew to get involved today with the video. If you're enjoying these, of course, please give it a like, please subscribe if you're new and you want to see more of these. Every single week you'll be getting expert insight from a journalist or writer of the opposition in the Eyes of the Opposition show. So I'm so glad that you've tuned in to watch this. Please leave a comment in the comment section below with your prediction for Sunday's game. Let's look forward to it. As always, up the Arsenal, and massive excitement ahead of the first game of the brand new season. See you very soon.